So good morning, everybody. Nice to see everyone here today, looking around. So if it's your first time and you're just establishing a yoga practice, part of what we want to get connected to this month is your foundational support. So in our beginning practice, especially for the first, I talk for about 10 or 15 minutes. You have absolute permission to move. You can stretch your legs out if you have, some knee injury. Sitting up on some form of a support, like a bolster or a blanket, is useful. When we're ideally looking for the hips to be either in a straight line with your knees or for the knees to be below the hips so that the hip flexors can start to soften, which is why you will always see me sitting up on a bolster or a block or a blanket of some kind. Ideally, it's so that we can sit at attention and really have your lower back be lengthening and lifting upwards. If this cross-legged position just doesn't fit you and you're really uncomfortable, you can also work with a block and a blanket. This, tends to be a little bit more intense on your knees, so if deep flexion is a problem, you can stack yourself up even higher, but putting a blanket on top of a block and then bringing your knees together and sitting this way is also really supportive of a lower back. So this is also good to establish these seated postures so that if you are going to establish some form of a meditation practice on your own, that you have some tools, because I think part of what we want to unpack as we begin establishing a practice is these ideas and expectations and images that we have of what it means to be a yogi. So anybody else have that perfect vision in their mind of like full lotus pose, like eyes closed, and it's like, oh, look at how peaceful and serene that person is. I bet they don't have a single thought going through their mind. They're absolutely at one with their essence of peace. And, that's not me. It's like, I can't ever do that. I couldn't stop my thoughts for like 5 seconds. It doesn't matter. And lotus pose was certainly not accessible. So I told myself for a long time that I didn't belong here, that it wasn't, that yoga wasn't for me, that it was really just for people who were born flexible and, like they came out of the womb with this flexi-bendy, life, and that everything that they did just kind of like, oozed with grace. And it was like, yeah, that's just not me. So I'm just not going to bother. And when I finally approached it, it was not because yoga, I didn't go to a yoga studio. In fact, I had a lot of ideas about what yoga studios were, about who yoga teachers were, about what the type of people that were going to frequent them were. And I was like, there's no way. They're going to smell the meat on me, from a mile away. At the time, 15 years ago, I had a very deeply steeped habit in my Italian upbringing, but also, so it's like, meat, I don't know, 3 times a day at least, for a variety of reasons, smoking, drinking, excess coffee, all kinds of bad habits. And it wasn't just because of my Italian upbringing, but it was also because of my nature. I have a slightly addictive personality. I grew up in a family that has a lot of addiction in it, on both sides: alcoholism, gambling addiction, other types of compulsive behavior. So it was essentially wired into my DNA to be, like that. And I just thought, well, that's just who I am. And this is just where I come from. So this is naturally going to be a part of my existence. And I'm just not good at those things. And why bother trying to change them? So it wasn't until I was in my 20s with all of these habits and all of these things going on in my body, and I was very overweight, and I was really disconnected from my body. I didn't want to really be in it. I didn't think that I deserved to be seen. I felt like, well, I don't fit the image of what it means to be, an attractive person. I didn't think that self-love, it's like, well, you can only really love yourself if you look perfect and you have these things and you do this that way. And, I'm not that. So at the end of the day, why should I try to put myself into an environment with people who are going to make me feel bad about myself? I mean, I hated going to the gym. It was one of those, like, most infuriating things was to try to connect to myself and be in my sweatpants and my loose t-shirt with my muffin top, feeling completely, disconnected and discombobulated when I saw these women walking around in their lycra and their perfect makeup and their earrings. It was like, you look that relaxed while working out. It's like I'm sweating like an animal. I don't have any grace. I'm stumbling all over myself. Why am I here? Why am I bothering? It's like this isn't worth it. So I just kind of, disconnected from it. And it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s and working as a professional in a corporate environment that they had yoga teachers showing up to do work in our conference room. And, by probably the sixth person that suggested that I do yoga with kind of like a look on their face, like, maybe you should go to yoga. And it was like, why? What are you saying? Why are you, what's your problem? What are you implying? And it was like, well, maybe you have some anger issues. Maybe you're a little hard on yourself. Maybe you have really rigid expectations about what the world is and you think that everybody's judging you and they're really not. So maybe you can go do some work with that. Fine. So attending these classes in a conference room was the only way that I was going to do it, because I said there's no way I'm going into a yoga studio with all of those skinny little girls, vegetarians who are condescending and I have zero to do with. It's like these are not my people. I just was very clear that they were not my people. I didn't realize that yoga by itself, the culture of what we have been conditioned, particularly women in body shaming. This is something that, we're taught from a very early age. If you don't look a certain way, if you don't age a certain way, if you don't carry yourself a certain way, you are going to become invisible. You should just be disconnected from that. And it's like, stand aside and let the girl in her little bikini, do her perfect back bend on the beach with the sunset. And that's what yoga was. So when you start actually practicing and then realizing, oh, actually the philosophy is deep and pure and true and has zero to do with what you actually look like when you're practicing yoga. Wow, there's a concept. When we're so visually engaged with what yoga is and these images of what we perceive as yoga, it's the physical practice is great. We are not supposed to look the same. We are not supposed to even, when we practice together, this is a more recent phenomena. Yoga in the past and in the original times was taught one-to-one. It was about what you needed personally, what your body could do personally, what your edges were personally, and then you explored those. And then you changed. It's, if you looked at me from 15 years ago, I should have saved pictures. I should have done video. It's like you don't think about these things when you start, because I really didn't think that the change was going to be that drastic or dramatic. Every aspect of my being is different. The way that I feed myself, the way that I talk to myself, the way that I handle and carry myself in stressful situations, the way that I recover from illness and injury, if I even get sick, the way that it's like everything is different now. And I would never imagine not being a yogi now. That's just, and I can't, thinking about the future, when the more practice you have, the more you change. Now it's becoming more subtle. Now my body and my consciousness is changing in another way, and even emotionally, patterns of behavior that I thought would never change have completely changed. So this practice in particular can give you that foundation if that's how you're approaching it. So this is a good month to explore, why are you here? Root Chakra Month, and this is something that for those of you who are new to the studio, we work with a different foundation focus every month. And the root chakra is this foundation of our being. It's in the core of who you are. It's your connection to the earth. It's your connection to a lineage. It's where you've come from. It's your ancestry. Science is proving a whole lot of things about epigenetics these days, and whether or not you believe in reincarnation or past lives. Your parents and your grandparents and your great-grandparents, because of what they experienced, the specific traumas that happened to them, it flips certain switches in your DNA and actually changes your DNA. And trauma is passed on from generation to generation. So it's also why you see alcoholism. It's also why you see, why does addiction run in my family? It's an epigenetic passing on. So your root chakra is what holds these epigenetic ancestral traumas. You actually have the potential to rewrite your DNA. Shamanic practices and yoga technologies have been proven time and time again. These, the ancient understanding of these things is now just being able to begin to be proven by science. And isn't that nice? There's all kinds of research that's really coming through. And that's something that we can do. When we're realizing that we have something in this lifetime, whether or not you think you've had, some sort of traumatic experience, or that what it is that you're processing or working on, it could be beyond you. It could be going back a couple of generations. And that's great, because that is also the sign that you're not going to carry it forward. You can break the cycle. It can change. And everything about you is flexible. So that's really something to get connected to this month. If it's, in particular, there is something up for you that's a big foundational issue. How your body, how you connect to your body, or whether or not you connect to your body through that self-love and safety, that's kind of part one, is first to make sure that your body understands that you are not here to hurt it, you're here to serve it. Your yoga practice is meant to be of service to your body's needs today. If you are forcing, pushing, comparing yourself to someone else, competing with some old version of you, oh, this was so much easier before I got injured, it was better when I was 18, oh, it's like we think we live in the past, let it go. It's like really show up for your body and what it can do for you today. Because there's no going back. There is only this moving forward aspect. And as we age, our needs change. As you go through things in your life, your needs will change. So witnessing the emotional attachment that you have to those desires, that's the yoga process right there. So when you see something come up and you want so very desperately to feel different, try to come to a place where, well, what would it feel like if I loved myself in this moment and accepted where I was instead of trying to change it or make it go back to what it was? What if I could just work with what I have? Your body will then start to respond to the change of direction, to the compassion that you're going to start to embody. When I stopped punishing myself on the mat for thinking that I was bad and needed to be fixed, I was very aggressive with myself. I was like pushing really hard, and I was injuring myself all the time, and I was chronically sore, and I just thought, well, I'm bad and I deserve to be in pain. So that's why I need to treat myself this way. When I finally acknowledged, I don't think this is ever going to change. Maybe this is how I'm always going to be. Maybe I'm always going to be tight. Maybe I'm always going to be overweight. Maybe I'm always going to be, ungraceful. Maybe when I compare myself to her over there, it makes me feel terrible. So maybe I should just stop looking at her, and maybe I should just start feeling into myself and give myself a break. Why am I so hard on myself all the time? When I finally did that, and then I started taking a child's pose instead of staying in downward dog when everybody else was in downward dog, when I started using a block instead of pretending like I didn't need it, when I started asking for help, and I started asking my teacher for refinements, and I started giving myself a little bit more support, and maybe doing a restorative class every now and then that wasn't about fire, it wasn't about weight loss, it wasn't about, building strength, it was about supporting, my tender heart. I was in a lot of pain emotionally, and when I finally gave myself those things, my personality started reflecting it. I wasn't so angry all the time. I was more peaceful. I was more patient, and that was the real work. That was what I really needed. So whatever aspect of your nature that you have believed is like, oh, there's this thing that I can't change, maybe hold some intention this month to say, well, maybe it's possible. Maybe it won't change. There's that possibility too. But maybe it will. What if you actually gave yourself permission to think that that part of you was flexible? And if there's a part that you feel is so unlovable and so broken that you could never love it, then that's even more so. That's the work that needs to be done. The degree to which you are repelled or you believe that this is not ever going to change, on the opposite side of that is the freedom that comes with the practice. Yoga by itself is a technology to be implemented for self-awareness and freedom. Ultimately, it's freedom from conditioning, from the outside world telling you that you're supposed to be something different than you are. It's freedom from our conditioning of our expectations about and the attachments that we have about the aging process, about what it is that we think that we're supposed to be capable of. We are all here looking for something. And if you are open to receiving that quality of information, it's going to come through your body. This is a good month to connect to this really sacred vessel. That's what the body is. Ultimately, it's a temple. It's a temple for the spirit. How you treat it, how you feel about it, how you look at yourself, how you speak to yourself, how you treat yourself on the mat is going to then have this ripple effect into everything else that you do. So by attending to yourself and really bathing yourself in the foundational principle of ahimsa. Ahimsa is nonviolence. It is the first rule of yoga. In the 8-limbed system that we're given from the philosophy, there are the yamas and the niyamas. The yamas and the niyamas are like the 10 commandments of yoga, and they predate the 10 commandments, so it's also like gee, why are there 10? So it's like it's a very interesting thing. Same thing with Om, as we start to really unpack what Om is. Om is actually the root of Amen and Shalom. Right? So it's all together, all of these things, all these pieces come together. So when we recognize that this unity that there is here, that ahimsa as the first rule of yoga in the yamas, it is nonviolence. Nonviolence is the way. And only you know how you are dealing with the violence in yourself. There is violence in all of us, and we've internalized it, we've shamed it, we've said that it's bad, we've said that it's wrong, we've said that we're embarrassed by it. It's okay. Get to just being in a compassionate space with yourself, and it will start to shift and move. Find all the places that you've said are unworthy of love, and then bring them back in. And it's sometimes it's hard, and sometimes we're going to feel some things, and especially if there is a balance in this practice of knowing when you have to submit and surrender to what is, and then making that accommodation, and then seeing the violence in the part that gives up before you even try. There is an aspect of that. We do have to work with a little bit of fire, and that's why this practice is not gentle. Our beginner's practice here is not designed to be gentle. It is designed to transform you. So whatever it is that you've got going on, you have to find that balance for yourself. And if you will, the way of when you know that you've slipped into violence is if you are pushing through something to the place where you can't breathe and there's searing pain localized in a joint or somewhere in your body, or on the other side, you give up as soon as something becomes uncomfortable. Your life is not designed to be comfortable all the time. In fact, we are designed to deal with discomfort. We are really meant to adapt. We are more adaptable as we go further, and the more you express and experience, the more you can adapt and then get stronger. Pain threshold and tolerance is something that we all need to be. We all need to be a little bit more able to navigate pain, all kinds of it. Mental pain, emotional pain, physical pain. If you're not going to have a real good time in this life, that's for sure. There's pain everywhere, and there's pain that we have to experience every day. So tempering the pain. What's violent pain versus what's good for you pain? So 2 phrases that you can use to determine that angry determination tempered with patient endurance. Both sides of the coin. How can we work with this? It's like breathe. If you cannot breathe, you're working too hard. That's the patient endurance aspect of it. So especially when I get into your hips this month, we are going to be doing some hip-heavy practices, which are also including just strengthening, getting stronger in your legs. Burning in the thighs is a part of it. Get used to it. It's fine. Heat is a good thing. Sweat is a good thing. It releases endorphins. It builds up more energy in your system. It's something that the more you work with it, the more you can take. The stronger you get, the better you feel. It just continues to expand and build upon it. Doesn't matter how old you are when you start. Doesn't matter how injured you are when you start. Doesn't matter. None of it. It doesn't matter if you were ever good at something when you were younger and then you forgot about it for a while. Irrelevant. Show up. Do the work, be patient, just really cultivate this sense of spiritual warriorship. That's another aspect of this month, is discipline. This is a discipline. This practice will transform you. You have to attend to it. If you're only here once a week, you'll get something. It's that's what I did in the beginning. I practiced for once a week. It was what my life could afford. And in between my practice, I then started making accommodations. Well, can I do some warm-ups? Can I do some sun salutations? I can't make a whole class, but can I do something? And then what's my yoga practice today? Is it watching what I eat? Is it paying attention to the feelings that I have before I'm putting something in my body? Am I noticing what I'm doing? It's like this is where your yoga practice goes beyond the physical. So if you can only physically come once a week, fine. Do not stop. That's the aspect. And if you fall off the wagon, it's okay. That's also a part of it. Sometimes we make progress and then we step back 3 steps. Fine. Get back on it. Do not let yourself fall into that. See, I can't start anything. See, I'm just weak and lazy. See, this will never work anyway. It's like, let's catch it. That's a violent thought. Bring yourself back to awareness. It's over and over again. It's really, that's the spiritual warriorship that this practice can give you, and that's what the discipline is. So from all of that, now mental space, let's come down into the body and really get clear on what you need today. So close your eyes and come inside. And if you're noticing that you are maybe a little churned up, or, I poked a particular button, good. It's good to get churned up and fired up in a way. And then we learn how to stay. So when you get grounded in that, if your eyes do not feel like softly closing, then keep them open. Just focus on a point a few feet ahead of you. Let your eyes go to half-mast. Your hands can rest lightly on your legs, palms facing down if you want to really connect to yourself. Feel that warmth. So you start to scan the body from head to toe. Notice if you have any areas of chronic pain, tension. What's the state of your union today? You're noticing now the mental and emotional spheres. What thoughts have been rattling around in your mind? What feelings in your heart? Can you notice the impact on your physical body? We cultivate this from a sense of witness without judgment. You're not wrong or bad. It just is what it is. As we hold that container, now we connect with the breath. As you inhale, really flood the body all the way down to the pelvic floor. And gush it out. Letting go. Do that a few more times on your own. If you feel like letting out some sound or sighing, honor it. Inhale deeply. You can really feel the shoulders kind of creeping up. As you exhale, let them drop. And we'll start to layer in your deep Ujjayi breathing. Ujjayi is an oceanic sound, constricting the back of the throat on the inhales and the exhales. It's the same muscles that you use when you whisper, or if you're trying to fog up a mirror. If you're not sure of the breath yet, do it with your mouth open for a round or two. And keep the breath going as you close the lips. It builds internal heat. It will help you to burn through whatever it is that you churn up, and it will also keep you very focused and present throughout the class. I will remind you. We set our collective intentions to bear witness to the collection of thoughts and feelings and sensations that are in you today, and to really witness yourself through the lens of nonviolence. So we can start to shift, repattern. Remember that you are never alone. We open the practice by chanting Om 3 times together. Inhale deeply for Om.